you and I should get started, and
Let's do it.
people are logging on. So everybody, welcome to World Affairs Council. Our Zoom program for today is with Arlette Guthrie, and we're going to discuss Home Depot's COVID pivot, and you are the pivoteur, so that's why we asked you to do this. This program today is brought to you in part by the UPS Foundation and by the corporate and individual members of the World Affairs Council. And I'm proud to say that Home Depot is a corporate member of the World Affairs Council. So thank Home Depot for this in part as well. Arlette Guthrie is Vice President for Human Resources at Home Depot, where you've been there for 19 years. It's probably 20 now, but.
Yeah, 20 now. So pretty exciting stuff. It's hard to believe.
That's cool. That's very cool. You need to update your LinkedIn profile.
I will do it.
Okay. She's a graduate of Dillard University in New Orleans, the best place in America to go to university, I imagine. And and received both her master's degree and her PhD in industrial psychology at Texas A&M. Yes. Her area of study is industrial and organizational psychology, which just fascinates me. I think that's so cool. So a note to all the people who are watching, please send your questions via the chat function to Fernanda Lucchine. She'll send a message to all of you, so all you have to do is respond to her. But send your questions to Fernanda. She'll shorten them, edit them. Any of you are angry at me, she'll edit that out, so please don't send any angry questions. And then around 12:30, I will ask your questions to Arlette. So Arlette, let me start off. We've done a whole bunch of business executives, and everybody has their emergency action plan, their crisis management plan. Yeah. Nobody's plan foresaw a pandemic. Can you talk about Home Depot and obviously you have to adjust, but how well did your planning, the planning you did in advance, how well did it stand up to the reality of the worst epidemic in the United States in over 100 years?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'd start by saying we are fortunate that our founders started the company based on a set of core values that really guide every decision that we make. And so while we could not have predicted this pandemic by any stretch, I think having core values to anchor your decisions has really made the difference for us as we've planned during this crisis. Of course, we deal with a number of issues and natural disasters all the time, just relative to the business that we're in. But if we start with our values, and our values would be doing the right thing, taking care of our people, making sure that we are there for the communities and customers that we serve, then it starts to make the decisions align pretty nicely. And so while this crisis has been quite honestly unpredictable, I do believe that our values have really been the key cornerstone of our planning. We've had a cross-functional team in place since January that they've looked at every angle of the COVID-19 situation. So whether you're talking about health and well-being, whether you're talking about protective equipment, whether you're talking about products and supplies and how to support customers and suppliers, there have been a number of different angles that we have assessed over this time period. And
this is really different from a natural disaster, right? Because a natural disaster, may affect Nashville or Atlanta, but not the whole country at the same time. I mean, this is just how do you deal with that? And part of that is in Georgia, where I'm located. Yeah. Home Depots are considered to be essential service. Is that true? Is that true everywhere? I mean, you're in Texas right now. Are all the Home Depots open across the country?
Yes. So Home Depot is in fact an essential retailer across the country, as well as in Mexico and in Canada. So we are fortunate to have been deemed as such. And that typically is the case with natural disasters as well. And so, we have always had a reputation of being in place for our customers and our associates when crises arise. And so while we didn't predict it, we, I think, have always been ready for adapting very quickly according to the needs of the current situation. If I think about COVID-19, though, we have been prioritizing health and well-being of our associates and customers and making sure that we have the essential products that our customers need to support their families and their homes during this time. And so while it's different, there are some similarities. I think more than anything, being agile and ready to move based on what's happening with this information has really made the difference.
Can you talk about the Home Depot Foundation? Because I know when there's when you see on the news, the tornado goes through a community and the Home Depot Foundation springs into action. What's the foundation done? I mean, what a huge challenge. I mean, this is not limited geographically, but nationwide. What have y'all done?
No, our foundation is typically focused on 3 priorities: natural disaster, to your point, certainly veterans causes, and then trades training. And while those continue to be critical, during this time, our foundation has quickly pivoted in order to drive efforts to support really our first responders in our hospitals. So we've provided masks and other critical PPE to hospitals and first responders. We actually made the decision to stop sale of all N95 masks in our supply chain. And so we redirected all shipments and donated those to hospitals, healthcare providers, and first responders across the country. And we've donated millions of dollars in supplies and personal protective equipment to those entities. In Atlanta, for example, we've worked closely with Grady and Piedmont. We're also working with organizations like Operation Blessing and the American Red Cross. In Atlanta, the Atlanta Boys Club or the West Side Future Fund. I mean, there are a number of entities that we're partnering with, but most importantly, taking care of our first responders and healthcare workers with the supplies that we have access to.
Are your stores everywhere as busy as the store near my house? I mean, it seems like everybody at home is like that plumbing project or the backyard garden that they've been putting off. Now they're working remote and they need supplies from Home Depot. Is that true everywhere?
You know, it seems to be true everywhere. And I think there are a couple of things happening. First and foremost, we do have essential supplies that are necessary for our customers to be able to take care of their homes and their families. So whether you're talking about repairs like plumbing or electrical repairs, appliances, things like that are necessary to deal with the disaster. Of course, we also supply a number of cleaning products. And so you think about sanitizing is at an all-time high. And so that's another set of essential products that our customers are looking for and coming to our stores for, or even ordering online. And so I would say stores have been particularly busy. But here's the thing. One of the things that we made a decision on early on in March is to really pull back all of our spring promotions. In the home improvement business, spring is like Christmas for other retailers.
Sure.
So spring is our busiest time of the year. And you mentioned that do-it-yourself customers are right now thinking about all of these projects. But we decided that it was important to cancel the spring promotions because we didn't want to drive extra traffic, extra customer footprint into the store, because we wanted to keep safety as the top priority. And so while we have had a number of customers that are coming in and they continue to come in, the most important focus has been to provide those essential products and services to our customers. Now, to your point, when you're sheltering in place, you start to see things around the house. You're like, I need to fix that leaky faucet, or I might want to do a different project that I haven't had time to do. And so we have seen that our do-it-yourself customers are engaging even more with the business than maybe they would have during this time. And so I think it's what you're seeing in terms of the business is a blend of finding those essential products and services, but also the do-it-yourself projects that may be emerging, like repairs and appliances and things that are important. I'd say The other thing that's important about this busy season is we have been very, very focused on modifying how stores operate in order to try to keep safety and well-being at the top of the list. So you've probably seen a line outside of your Home Depot because we're limiting the number of customers that can go into the store in order to maximize social distancing. You know, the other thing that we're doing is we have limited the number of entrances and exits so we can control traffic. We have PA system announcements that are happening to remind customers and associates about social distancing. We have PPE in the store. We're doing just a number of things that continue to remind associates and customers of the importance of distancing in order to keep themselves safe. You'll find, signage and markers on the floor that show you what 6-foot distancing looks like. And so there are all of these things that we're trying to do simultaneously while balancing the volume of customers that are in our stores. And that's happening across the country in terms of those limits.
I know you won't believe this, but I get to go during senior citizen hours, so it's not that crowded.
I do not believe it. You are absolutely right. And it's been interesting because, to your point, I think even with those essential hours, you're still seeing that traffic. Right. And I do believe that customers have found the Home Depot as a place during this pandemic that has provided a number of needs that they have.
Well, we got cleaning supplies at Home Depot when there was none at the supermarket, right? You know, so we appreciate that. So
in the future, even when we pass the pandemic, start with the Home Depot because we'll have everything that you need.
I think our consumption of bleach may decline. So I hope. So talk about your supply chain.
Sure.
I mean, I know your supplies. You've got a global supply chain stuff coming in from everywhere.
Yeah.
And as the pandemic has affected some countries and then eased off, I mean, that has had been a huge challenge for a company as large as Home Depot. Are there products that are in short supply? I mean, there's got to be a huge demand for masks and other things.
Sure.
And how have you, I mean, is this something that you guys just do all the time and you know how to switch your supply chain around, or is this unusual?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, like every other retailer, a number of supplies have been in high demand, certainly cleaning, appliances, and other repair items. And so our merchants and our supply chain teams have done a fantastic job of adapting and quickly replenishing the critical supplies. I mentioned that we made the decision to redirect all N95 masks, but there are other supplies that continue to be available, and that's the direct result of our merchants and our supply chain pushing really hard to make sure that we could meet the needs of our customers. In addition to redirecting those shipments, we do have other supplies that our teams have sourced in order to make sure that we were absolutely prepared for what we're seeing right now. And so it continues to be an ongoing or an evolving situation, but I think our merchants and supply chain leaders have done a fantastic job to help support the needs of our business and of our customers.
So talk a little bit about Mexico and Canada. I know Mexico is behind the U.S. in I don't know the right words, that the peak in COVID, and seem to be having a terrible time right now. Canada seems to manage relatively well. I mean, what kind of challenges is that caused for you?
Sure. As you know, the challenges of the pandemic have been similar around the world, and we've been most concerned with the safety and well-being of our associates and customers. And so we've had hundreds of ordinances given by states and local municipalities in the U.S. and abroad that we've complied with and figured out how to navigate. For example, in Canada, particularly in Ontario, Canada, we had to turn on curbside pickup practically overnight because that was the only way, the only option for remaining open and operational for our customers. And the associates in Ontario basically operated with curbside only for about a month, a bit over a month, during the pandemic. In Puerto Rico, we also had to turn on a new process where customers could only pick up items by appointment only based on the local ordinances there. And so while the situation has looked differently across the country or outside of the country, I think flexibility and agility have been key in terms of responding to what our customers have had needs of. And so I think we've continued to serve communities across North America, whether you're talking about Canada, Mexico, or in the US, but there have been nuances that we've had to adjust to depending on what the local need has been.
Sounds like you've all done a great job training your associates. And I mean, that's really a tribute to you that people are that flexible and resilient that they're willing to shift overnight from one way of doing business to another.
And, you know, I think that's what's been so unique about the COVID-19 pandemic, which is the information is constantly evolving. We haven't had, there's no playbook for this. And so we are making decisions real time, looking to make sure they are in the best interest of customers, associates, and suppliers. But at the same time, recognizing that we may get new information tomorrow, or quite honestly, in the next hour. And so we've been super proud of our associates and leaders across our stores and distribution centers for the agility that they have demonstrated during this time.
Like most people, I think of Home Depot as being the store near my house. I don't think of your wholesale business. Do y'all supply hospitals directly?
We do. And so we have what we call the Home Depot Pro business, and that is our maintenance, repair, and operations business. And so we do supply hospitals directly, and that is providing high demand product like personal protective equipment, including dust masks, respirators, gloves, and cleaning supplies. We have definitely prioritized the fulfillment to healthcare providers and first responders. We're marshaling all of our resources through our supply chain network to get those much needed supplies to those particular entities. So yes, our business is actively engaged with institutions like hospitals on a regularly occurring basis. And certainly during the pandemic, it's been that much more important in terms of how we connected the supply chain in order to provide those needs.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I had no idea. And I assume, but maybe I'm wrong, that online purchases have increased. Is that correct? And how do you shift to that? And do you expect that, a year from now that people will continue to buy online rather than going into a store?
No, we've seen a significant shift in our online sales over the last 3 months. And think about it, customers are sheltering in place, some mandatory, some not, but still people are staying in home more, and they're tackling do-it-yourself projects. They're also dealing with repairs. And so our interconnected retail strategy has been so important for us. We saw an 80% increase in online sales this quarter, 80%. And so it's been just extremely high in terms of the volume. And relative to that 80%, more than 60% of the time, our customers have chosen to buy it online, but they pick it up in store. And so it's been important to not only have the product available in store and available online for shipping, but also have the product available for customers to pick up and have curbside delivery to have contactless interactions and get the products and services that they need. In addition to that, when I think about where we are with the pandemic, we can't predict what's going to happen, but I would say that I think this experience has allowed some of our customers who hadn't engaged online before to see an expanded option in terms of how they interact with the Home Depot. And so now I think you have more customers that have been introduced to our digital platform, and I expect that in the future they will continue to leverage that platform. I think our stores will always be important. To your point, you talked about your local store and how you engage and how important that is in the community. I also think that the convenience of being able to place the order ahead of time and then swing by the store to pick it up is important, and I expect to see more of that as not only as the pandemic evolves, but to your point, a year from now, when there's a vaccine and things tend to normalize a bit more. And by the way, I don't know that we'll ever go back to pre-COVID-19. I think we are shaping our next normal as we speak. And so I do believe that the interconnected retail strategy is critical, because customers will access the Home Depot online as much as they do in store.
Well, I know I will. I mean, it's because it's so darn convenient. You're an industrial psychologist, so let me ask you, put that hat back on now.
Sure.
Everybody, whether you're the customer or you're the associate or you're an executive in Home Depot, I mean, there are stresses that nobody anticipated. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, how do you deal with that with 400,000 employees? I mean,
yeah,
gosh, millions of customers. How do you, that must have real challenges for you?
Sure. I'd first say it starts at the top. We have been very fortunate to have a senior leadership team led by Craig Manier that puts associates first. And I think when you start with that, it makes all the other decisions easy to make, because associates have been our priority. And so I'd say first and foremost, leaders are very focused on doing wellness checks and check-ins with their associates, whether they're in stores, distribution centers, contact centers, virtually or in person, depending on what the need of the business is. So that, I think, is kind of a foundation to how we've approached it. Secondly, we've had a number of enhanced benefits. You may have seen in a press release, but we invested more than $850 million in enhanced benefits to take care of our associates during this pandemic alone. And so we've offered 80 additional hours of paid time off to our full-time associates, 40 additional hours of paid time off to our part-time associates. And if they choose not to use it during this time, it'll get paid out at the end of the year. We've also offered additional paid time off in the way of 240 additional hours for those that are 65 or older, or those that are in high health risk categories as identified by the CDC. We've offered paid time off to anyone who has contracted COVID-19 because we want to make sure that they are safe and that they keep their fellow associates and customers safe.
Sure.
We've also offered up to 14 days of additional paid time off for anyone who has had to self-quarantine. So I may have come into contact with someone. We want to make sure that they're continuing to be paid during that time as well. We have weekly bonuses that we've added for our hourly associates in stores and distribution centers. We're paying double overtime. We have extended dependent care benefits. We've waived co-pays and just a number of things. But to your specific question about mental health, we know that people deal with crises differently, but I do expect that anxiety may be up. I expect that coping mechanisms are needed during this time. And so Home Depot has a number of expanded benefits. We have an ongoing approach where unlimited visits for coaching and employee assistance are available to our associates. We have 24/7 clinician access for COVID-19 related concerns that our associates can access. We have also virtual psychology and psychiatry visits that are available to associates that are enrolled in our medical plan. And then for our part-time associates, we also have an array of benefits that they can access that include mental health services as well. If associates are not enrolled in our medical plan, we still have discounted rates that they can access in order to get the services that they need during this time as well. And so, there are an array of benefits out there. I'd say some healthcare related, but also some are related to how people provide for themselves and their families during this time. And so I think when you pull all of those opportunities together, we're certainly looking to relieve some of the stress that associates may be feeling during this time in order to support them and their families.
How do you get people to talk about their anxiety? I mean, particularly in a work setting.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be a huge challenge of, people, how's it going to affect my career? Is it going to affect my next promotion? Do I even want to be talking about this with with somebody who's not a friend, but a professional associate? How do you get people to do that?
Sure. Well, we have a history of engaging directly with our associates. And I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the broadcast that taking care of our people is one of our core values. And so we believe that it is incumbent upon leaders to make a personal connection with their associates in order to get to know them, in order to connect, so that, to your point, there is a comfort level in discussing issues that may be stressing them. We do town halls, and whether that's virtual or in person, in order to stay connected, but we also have a lot of personal one-on-one contact with our associates. But there are times where associates still need some additional third-party support. And so that's where we provide access to the 24/7 contact with psychological services in order to support them through our employee assistance program. And so if associates choose not to have that dialogue internally, we want to make sure that they have full access to third parties that will help them as well.
I heard one of your founders talk about Home Depot associates bleed orange.
Yes.
Yes.
We do. If you cut me, you won't see red, you'll see orange. It's true.
So I saw on Axios website this morning, there was some survey data from, I think it was Prudential had sponsored, although they didn't do the poll.
Okay.
That said that when people are working remote, that it decays corporate culture, and that people feel more distant from their employer. I mean, that's got to be, that's something new for all of us.
Sure.
Are you seeing that, or does the orangeness of your blood overcome that? I mean,
well, we spend a lot of time on culture, and I mentioned the importance of leaders in terms of creating that connectivity. And so part of it is the relationship that the leaders have created even prior to any kind of crisis occurring. It is so important for us that we live our values, not just, talk about our values, but we live them, and that we truly have an authentic approach to taking care of our associates. And so during this time, leaders have continued to call on associates, have virtual stand-up meetings on a daily basis, or in-person meetings as the situation has evolved, to make sure that connection stays strong. We also recognize that we have some associates that live alone. And so it's, some of us have had homeschooling going on, where we have a whole lot more people in the house than we typically would. And that's created some stressors. And so we've been consistent about sending messaging to our team to say, listen, take a break. Recognize that, if you're homeschooling, you're doing 2 full-time jobs right now. Cut yourself some slack, find the balance, decide when you need to unplug, when you need to be online. We understand that it's evolving for everyone. Or for those that work alone, there are several members of the leadership team that continue to reach out to them to make sure that they are okay, that, check in to make sure they need anything. And then when we say orange blood, we take care of each other. So it's not uncommon for peers to call one another or to reach out and just check in. Our foundation also has what we call the Homer Fund. And the Homer Fund is another way that we provide support to our associates that are in need. So if they are facing financial difficulty during this time, if they may have had a spouse or a partner who may be unemployed, as you know, we're dealing with double-digit unemployment across the country. And so if that's happening, we want to make sure that we're continuing to provide that support. And so there are so many different ways that we are connecting to keep that orange blood flowing, so that associates know they are not alone during this time. And I think that the decisions that we've made have been intended to support associates proactively. So we don't wait until they say, hey, I need this. when we talked about, like the additional paid time off, those were decisions that our executive leadership team came together to make before the need ever arose, because we're trying to think proactively about what it means to be a Home Depot associate and how we should take care of them. And so that will continue. And that happened well before COVID-19, but it's been paramount during this situation. And so I think the blood is flowing. We won't allow it to stop, because I think it's a defining characteristic of our company and our culture.
Oh, that's great. Let me encourage everybody, please send questions to Fernanda, right? We're getting to the question time, so please send questions to Fernanda. Arlette, you're terrific. What is the, not just Home Depot, but the economy in general, what is the workplace of the future going to look like? How has this changed us?
Yeah.
What does this mean? What are you telling your kids? I mean, if for high school kids or university students, how has this changed the world that they're going to encounter?
Well, it's interesting that you bring up university students. So on Monday, June 1st, we will have our summer internships in the way that we've always had an incredible, robust program. But guess what? Everyone will be virtual. And so we made a decision that it was important for us to continue our focus on the talent pipeline, but at the same time recognizing the environment has changed, but we don't want to limit the opportunities for those university students that were depending on this experience with the Home Depot. We also are dependent on them as a talent pipeline. And so we have adapted in a very short period of time. And so that's just one way that we're continuing to respond to what's happening. But to your question of what does the employment of the future look like, I think we're shaping it right now. There were probably companies that were somewhat hesitant about virtual work. And I think during this time where we found it to be a necessity, we found that you can be productive, that you can connect, that you can have strategy sessions and meetings and make decisions real time that impact your business. Now, there are some things that are best done in person. There's some jobs that require you to be on the front line. There's some jobs that require you to be in person. And so we're recognizing that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to the kind of work that we have to do to support the business. But at the same time, being nimble and creative and thinking about how and where work gets done differently is definitely important for employers that will be successful today and going forward. And so I think that's probably the biggest part of what the future of work will look like. It will be more and more flexible. We've talked about flexible work arrangements for a long time. I think it's a necessity now. It's interesting too, there is, I'm gonna call it the pre-vaccine future and the post-vaccine future. Pre-vaccine, the office environments will look different, just like the store and distribution center environments look different. You think about the signage and the markers for social distancing. That will be important. Personal protective equipment, that will be important. The number of people that can be in meetings, that will change. You'll have to limit the things that we used to do so easily in order to keep associates and third-party vendors and suppliers that may visit different buildings safe. And then post-vaccine, I think we will have learned a number of things over this time period that will transfer into how we shape the future of work. But I suspect that there will be a comfort level with the virtual nature of how we get work done, just like you talked about shopping. You were talking about our online business. I think just as customers have gotten more comfortable with online shopping, I think there will be a virtual workplace that will engage even more than it has up to this point. And think about interviewing. Right now, you and I could be conducting an interview. You could make an informed decision around whether or not I would be a good fit for a job opening that you have. I think we've for so long had that person-to-person contact in person, but there are a number of efficiencies that you could gain through just virtual interviewing. And so I think these things will continue to emerge as important components of the future workforce.
But now you've embarrassed me because we decided to cancel our internship program for the summer. So.
Oh no! No embarrassment. You know,
we might have to reconsider. I mean, seriously, I appreciate what you said. We may have to reconsider that decision. That may not have been the right one.
And Ambassador Shapiro, here's what I would say. There are a number of companies that made the same decision because it would change how they were able to engage with the associates or the new interns. I think for us,
sure,
we looked at it as an opportunity to be creative and think differently. And we had to go back and rethink some of the assignments or the projects that the interns would be working on. But we thought, listen, they had been, attending classes virtually for the last 2+ months prior to university semester ending. And so we thought, you know what, we have a responsibility to continue that experience and make it work for them and for us. We also have a part of our internship where we take internal associates, so associates from our stores, from our contact centers, from our distribution centers, and we bring them into our corporate offices to have new and different experiences. We could not, so when you talk about being orange-blooded, that's a part of that orange-blooded commitment that says we want to create new and different opportunities for our associates as well. And so we couldn't let that stop. And that's where that commitment to continuing the internship virtually continue to be important. And so, we'll have 200 virtual interns. I'll let you know how it goes, but we're excited about it. We have right now merchants that are working virtually. We have, finance leaders and accountants that are working virtually. We have HR professionals that are working virtually. So we figured that we could carry that forward and continue that internship experience. So if you need any, insight into how we're doing it, I'm happy to share with you because we want to make sure that our university students, not just those that work with Home Depot, but those across the country continue to get that experience.
That's great. Let me, a last question for you. How has your leadership style changed over the past 10 weeks?
Yeah. I don't know if it's changed because I would say, at Home Depot, we value connectivity with our leaders and associates, and we believe it's such an important part. But here's what I would say. I've probably seen more of my team. So I have a team that's distributed across the country. I've probably seen more of them during this virtual time than I would have before, because we would be more dependent on in-person meetings to make the connection. And so it's been super exciting to realize how the virtual nature of work can actually impact connectivity even more, especially if you have an initial connection that exists already. And so I would say I've certainly been more open to leveraging video conversations in order to continue our interactions. As far as working, one of the things that's been important for me in my leadership style has been figuring out the balance as a homeschool teacher and a professional leading a large team. And so I've recognized the importance of having one calendar and really figuring out how work and life integrate. And so, you think about it, we, get up in the morning, put on our clothes, we head to work, and you can kind of block out home for a little period of time and actually focus in on work. Well, at home now, I have little fingers knocking on the door like, Mom, when's the, Mom, I have my next assignment. Can you help me with this math? And so I recognize that the blend of work and family is even more important than maybe before. And so I think it's also being in the situation myself has impacted my empathy for what associates might be experiencing in their home environments. And so even as we're making decisions real time, making sure that, childcare and, caregiving for older parents or, think about families that may be dealing with COVID-19 in their homes as we speak, or maybe having associates or their family members in hospitals. All of those scenarios have come into play as we're making decisions. And so I would say as a leader, it's even enhanced my empathy as we make decisions to make sure that anything we do will enable associates as they look to balance home and life during this time, and even beyond this time. We know that this will have a lasting impact on how we shape our future as well.
I do have one more. That was a great answer, by the way. And I bet you and lots of other people have more appreciation for their kids' teachers than they ever did in the past.
Yes. I've already started buying my teacher appreciation gifts for next year because they do an amazing job. I'm trying to juggle two, and they juggle, 18, 20, 25 in a classroom. And so I look at that and I go, wow, what an amazing impact that teachers have. And, I think I'm also a believer that everything happens for a reason. And so it's interesting to hear parents talk about their newfound appreciation for the work of our educators. And that's something that may not have happened otherwise.
Nobody does time management better than teachers. That's for sure.
That's right. Absolutely.
Okay, so here's a question from Ashley Perry. She wants to know, what is your favorite part of working from home? And secondly, what do you do to recharge? I mean, your energy level is so high right now. Now, I know you're in Texas, so it's only 11:41. But what do you do to recharge?
Well, first of all, I'd say to recharge, I have recognized the importance of getting up from the desk. One of the things that is important to realize is you could actually sit in front of your computer screen for 12 hours straight and not get up. Right. There are a number of video meetings that are scheduled, but also there are calls that are coming in constantly. And so I do think that recharging is super important. So I have literally scheduled in my day time to get up and walk away from the desk. I've also even done some things where I've done walking meetings and encouraged my team to do so. It's like, all right, we have this 1 hour meeting. Everybody get up from their desk. Let's, walk around your block, walk around your house, walk around your neighborhood, whatever works for you. But let's get up and get active during this time. Not anything stressful, but just to give people some movement, because you don't think about, what benefit you get from walking upstairs at work, or, you walk from meeting to meeting, or you have lunch during the day. And so I think those things continue to be important in order to keep your physical well-being going, but also your psychological well-being. I also will make sure that I am taking the time to unplug when it's time to be the homeschool teacher, for example. And so when the family has needs, you have to separate the two, I think. At least that's what has worked for me. And so I would say that is a way to unplug. Now, to the first part of the question of what's been my favorite part of being at home and working from home, honestly, it has been, being able to gain productivity by not having to, get dressed and get the kids ready and get them out the door. I mean, I've shaved probably 4 hours on when you think about the front end and the back end of preparation and commute in order to really get going. And so I feel like I can get going earlier and be more effective overall in this virtual experience. Now, I'd say the thing that I've loved most as a mother is getting to know my kids better. It's interesting because we're always on the go, we're always extremely busy, but I've found that getting to know them and how they interact with their teachers, how they interact with their schoolwork, and when they're tapped out, and knowing when to push and when to pull back has been pretty important and an eye-opening experience for me that I think is important for parents and educators, as well as those that are in the workplace to have. And so those are probably the two most important experiences, and quite honestly, life-changing experiences that I've had during this time, and they've been incredible.
Arlette, Guthrie, this has been a great 45 minutes. I want to thank you so much for taking your time and sharing so freely with us and sharing from your, not just your professional life, but your personal life as well.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been incredible. I'm enjoying it. This is not just, I happen to be on Central Time. It's always exciting to be able to talk about our associates, our values, and what we're doing. And I really appreciate what you're doing in terms of bringing light to what's happening across the country relative to the COVID-19 pandemic. I think so many of us are trying to learn from each other. And so the series that you have orchestrated, I think, has made a significant difference, and certainly appreciate what you've been doing.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate the compliment. That's terrific. And I appreciate your energy level. Whatever you're doing to recharge, it's working, I can assure you.
Well, thank you.
So thank you very much, Arlette. Everybody online, please tune in tomorrow at noon. We have Stacey Abrams. It's a program for members only. So if you're not a member, please join. If you're not in Georgia, we've got a virtual, we're trying to get a digital membership. That's a new thing. And so
yes.
Delighted to have digital members from around the country. Next week, we've got Dr. Stephen Morrison, who's the VP for Health Policy at the Center for Strategic International Studies in Washington. He spoke, I think, 8 weeks ago and was hugely popular. And so we're bringing him back next Tuesday to talk about where are we in this COVID pandemic? What does he see going forward, not just nationally, but also internationally? And then on Wednesday, we have Doug Shipman, who's the CEO of the Woodruff Arts Center, talking about how the Arts Center is surviving without patrons going to the symphony, going to the museum, and going to the theater. What are they doing, and how are they managing, and how do they get culture out to their stakeholders? So we got 3 great programs coming up. I'll see you all tomorrow. Arlette, Guthrie, once again, thank you. This has just been tremendous. Great. See you soon.
Have a great one. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.